Here, no, let's do this.
I did not grab my DVD. Or the cereal, actually, which is a really
I
good
have the
Bible.
Blu-ray.
I do too. I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Sains. I'm joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski, my buddy Susie, my buddy Don Schmidt, my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to discuss the 1994 movie.
Drew. You forgot Patrick.
And Patrick, yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I am the man who needs no introduction.
Yeah, but
uh,
you're going to get one anyway, Patrick, because that's
Okay, well, thank you.
well, just like the shadow, Patrick is in the darkness hiding. So there's that. Um, so maybe Patrick McCray is the shadow. Who knows? Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
Coincidence.
So there's that. This movie stars Alec Baldwin. We have Penelope Ann Miller in here. Tim Curry is in here. Ian McKellen is in here. Jonathan Winters is in here. Jesus Christ, this cast is really good. By the way,
He is in here.
yes. For those who don't know, The Shadow was created April 1st, 1931. Writer, magician's assistant, journalist Walter B. Gibson, who went under the pen name of Maxwell Grant, created The Shadow, and he wrote The Shadow really, really well. He also helped with the radio a bit. Now, also,
Jewel, I have to ask you. Now, I know you're in the wind-up, but as a magician's assistant, did he dress like Zatanna?
no, but he was a magician's assistant, and he was he wrote Harry Houdini's autobiography because he was friends with Harry Houdini. True story. So there is that. Also, keep in mind this movie, the 1994 movie with Alec Baldwin, takes some of the pulp and the radio and combines it a bit. Where they get the invisibility from is the radio. There's a nod to the pulp where Alec Baldwin's character is having a dream sequence and he does this with his face. They're giving a huge nod to the pulp because the shadow is the man of many faces has none of his own. And that's the
now Jewel, I'll ask you. I have to take issue with this whole invisibility for the radio thing. They never could have afforded a special effect like that on the radio. Continue.
Yeah, and Jewel, you're forgetting one important thing about the pulps is that the pulp shadow had, and it's used in the movie. He had a network of agents where
I was getting ready
he
to
would
say
work. Like Shrevey was in the pulps.
Yeah.
Burbank, the guy on the screen, was in the pulps. Even the guy at the beginning with the Dr. Tam, and the scene on the bridge, that's taken from The Living Shadow. However, the original character that was featured was Harry Vincent. So there you go.
It was the Harry.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say all that. You're
No,
right.
you weren't.
The Shadow has a network of agents.
God.
He really does.
Oh, it's getting really. Susie, Don, I'm sorry. You've arrived in the middle of a family chat. We're gonna work it out.
Yeah.
We're gonna work it out.
So let's start. Susie, when did you first see The Shadow, the 1994 movie?
Yesterday.
Oh, really? There you go.
Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit it that the only time I've ever heard of it was hearing your podcasts and you mentioning it on your podcasts. And so when you brought it up a few months ago, I was like, yeah, I should give it a whirl and watch it. And so Donna and I kind of watched it at the same time. And I have to say, I haven't. What was that?
Why don't I get invited? You guys probably roasted marshmallows too. I'd love to go to those things.
S'mores.
Anyway,
s'mores.
I'm just letting you know. I'm I'm available.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely. So I haven't watched a movie like that in a very, very long time. And it was a lot of fun to watch. I can see how you, Jewel, like it as much as you do. I had no idea about that it was a radio show that Orson Welles did, like the first episode. I didn't know any of that. But I thought it was really fun. And I love the music. I think Alec Baldwin looked spectacular. They cast the perfect actor, I think, for something like that. it was really, yeah, he was really
He's
nice
great.
to look at.
Orson Welles. Most people
He's no
remember.
Jonathan Leonard.
Yeah. Most people remember Orson Welles mostly for voicing the Shadow. He actually only voiced the character for one season, and he wasn't the first actor to do so, actually. His Shadow is more of a reboot, going off the original actor who did it. Now, there's a very good episode called The Shadow Challenge, a challenge to the Shadow, where it's on the radio, and you have Bill Johnstone Jr., who's my favorite Shadow voice actor on the radio, going against the man who originally voiced the Shadow in that episode. Go listen to it. It's really, really good. And no, it wasn't Cantinflas.
It wasn't
It
Be honest.
wasn't the actor who you said, but
Yeah,
I forget his name at the time. Sorry.
Yeah,
But
and for everyone who's watching and for people here, you can actually find episodes via the Internet Archive. So you can download MP3s and listen.
yeah, I will share the episode with everybody here when we're done.
Okay.
So it's really, really good.
This is turning into a competition, isn't it? And I'm loving it.
Not at all. No, not a
You know,
competition.
Jewel, I didn't even know that there was so many great actors in it.
Yeah.
And that was a surprise. I was like, wow, I can't, and it was like one after the other. I was like, wow. And I know I'm gonna sound so geeky, but I got excited because I saw Alf's the actor that
Mac
played
Wright.
Alf, the father.
Yeah, Willie
And
Tanner
I hadn't
himself.
seen him in anything else. I was like, oh my gosh, he's even in this movie. It was so cool.
You know who no one has mentioned? It's the actor who played my father's favorite Star Trek character, Neelix, Ethan Phillips.
Yeah, he's like a museum guard. And he's often like the first 15 minutes.
I
I
thought
I
recognized
Canadian Brigadier General Francis X. McCray, my father, loves Ethan Phillips,
Cool.
but only as Neelix.
I couldn't place him. He
He
looked
gets
so
daily
familiar.
cameo videos.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, Francis X. McCray.
Yeah. What did you think of the movie
Lieutenant.
overall, Susie? What was your favorite scene from it?
What was my favorite scene? Well, I can tell you that scene where he's having the nightmare, where he pulls off his face. That really freaked me out. I was like, "Oh no!" It was so like intense. I like the beginning scene on the bridge.
Yeah.
With was he a cop killer and the Shadow appears and
Yeah.
I thought that was because there was the action, it just started from the get-go. So I liked that scene. I like Margot's ability. I mean, I wouldn't want to have it, but I think that that's a really neat ability to have. She should work for the police department and as a detective or something, and she could solve cases with that ability. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool. And one of the things that I noticed about it was that even though it was set in the 30s, it had that very 90s feel to it, and I just love that. It made me really nostalgic. So
Me too.
Yeah. Donna, what did you think?
I really enjoyed this movie. I know you'll ask me specific questions, but if I could get those I Ching wands and go back to that beautiful Art Deco era. Okay, these are just some random thoughts. I think my personal favorite scene was the first scene in the nightclub. Although I thought the scene towards the end with the mirrors is really good. I want to make this comment real quick. I think Alec Baldwin was at his peak, and he was so good looking. It was to the point of distraction for me because he was in a tuxedo, and Penelope Miller was in that dress. It was beautiful. But I want to give, and you all will get this, I want to give a big shout out to James Hong, who played Li Ping at the beginning, who has been active as an actor since 1954, has played in so many iconic, the evil Asian parts through film through all these decades. And I want to do a shout out to him. He is a fellow USC Trojan. He graduated from the he promised his father he'd go to USC and get a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering, and he holds a BS in civil engineering on top of being a Hollywood icon. So
Wait.
James
Who did
Hong,
he play?
he played
Yeah,
Li Ping.
yeah.
Remember the guy at the very beginning that came in and was telling,
because
yeah,
he's low pan, isn't he?
Yes.
In Big Trouble in Little China.
right. He plays all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's iconic. So anyway, I want to give a shout out to him. But Joel, it's a movie. Sometimes movies will be critiqued, but it's this and that. But we all forget why movies were invented, for entertainment, and this was fully entertaining. Jonathan Winters, Peter Boyle, Sir Ian McKellen. I'm going to go on and on and on and on. And we had a little sidebar with Gordon while you were trying to fix everything. And it just came in that week with The Mask and The Lion King and got lost. Anyway, I'll shut up now because you want to go to other people, but initial thoughts.
I want to hear more about it.
No, you're making great points that you just made. The Shadow had stiff competition at the box office for sure. To me, it's the most underrated superhero movie, pulp hero movie ever made. Now, I do slightly prefer the 1940s serial over this because Victor Jory did a hell of a job playing the Shadow. That's a little more true to the pulps than what this is, but it's really, really good for its if you ever want to go buy the 1940s serial, it's really good. It's well worth it. It's well worth to watch the whole thing. Go check it out. Gordon, go ahead. You're next. I'm sorry.
Well, I love this movie. I think to put it really briefly, this is the movie that the Tim Burton Batman movie should have been. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
I am a sucker for that Art Deco. I love that whole 1930s Art Deco ambiance. I like the fact that when I first saw it, when I originally saw it, I thought some of the humor was ill-placed, but I think this movie has aged really well. It's a lot better, and I watched it yesterday, and it's a lot better than I even remember seeing it. The script is spot on because it does have it will go in one direction and then move in a totally different direction where you're kind of kept off balance in a good way. Like with the bomb, where it's like, okay, they clip one thing, and instead of 2 hours, it speeds up, so it's like 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I love the two scenes. I love the two scenes with Jonathan Winters in the nightclub, because it's you see Alec Baldwin's face darken, and then he's putting his shadow thing on him, and Winters is he's so used to, he's one of the original improvisers, so he knows how to hit the right tone. Like, there is no shadow. Oh, of course there's no shadow. If there's a shadow, I'm Eleanor Roosevelt. And I love the end.
And he was.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Patrick.
Yeah, he was.
And I love the ending, which is maybe one of the best. As he's chasing Shuan Khan through the kitchen, and then they get in that hall of mirrors. That is maybe the best homage to Lady from Shanghai I have ever seen.
I would say they finally got it right.
Well, the Roosevelt reference is actually a nod to when the Shadow and the Green Hornet teamed up. That's actually in that comic. Go read it. The Dark Knights is what it's called, I believe. But really,
it wasn't called the Foot Race.
Go ahead.
Wait. What comic was this? When was this published?
I forget when, but I do know the Shadow and the Green Hornet teamed up.
Because if you're talking about the Dynamite comic, that came after this movie.
Oh, did it really?
Yes, it did.
Okay, sorry. I thought it came before. My apologies.
No, it came much after, because I remember when I was a really, really young child back in the glory back in that ancient time known as the early 1970s. And DC had started putting out Shadow comics, and I read those up, and I heard the radio show on old time radio station, and I even had the Ben Cooper Halloween costume,
Cool.
which had the mask.
Really?
But
There was a tie-in Ben Cooper costume back then?
yeah, there
That's really
there
good.
was a
That's
Shadow
great.
Ben Cooper costume.
That's great. I love that. I'm glad you got it. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Patrick's walking away. Patrick, can you hear me?
Of course I can, Jewel.
It's your turn. What did you think about this movie?
I'm sorry, I had the Strom Thurmond costume.
God. Oh, that's a vision.
It was, in fact. The next year I was Jack Germond. Those were the days.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
were
but
the
Patrick,
days.
I think you probably made one hell of a Strom Thurmond.
It's true. It's true. That's the strong man argument.
Why do I feel like after what you just said, Gordon's saying that's what she said?
It could be. A lot of people have referred to Strom Thurmond as she over the years, but we're not going too far into this. So anyway, never has a martini looked better than at that. What was it? The Club Excelsior? Is that what it was?
The Cobalt Club.
The Cobalt Club.
Isn't that
That's
cool?
right.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been looking for an original sin. One with a twist, a bit of a spin. I've done all the old ones, so they've all been done in. That's from Taylor Dane, who I think is the real heart and soul of this movie. And if you have the soundtrack, that song is inexplicably at the end, along with Some Kind of Mystery, which is being played at the Club Cobalt. That's a great movie. I got to see this. It was a weird time. I guess this while I was working on Babylon 5. And I had to go to Riverside every weekend because I was paying like $20 a day to sleep on somebody's couch, and in Los Angeles. And so it was a way to cut down on the cost of that. And, here's a secret about California that, maybe Don, maybe you guys should tell people before they move there, which is no one has air conditioning. It's all a lie. And you guys you've sold yourselves on the line of, let's just open up the windows and turn on the fans, which is like sitting in the Sahara with a blow dryer in front of your face. It does nothing compared to real air conditioning. If somebody pointed out, real air conditioning costs $800 a month.
But it's a dry heat.
It's a dry. That's right. It's a dry heat.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
So we went to I moved back to the South. Are you kidding me? My God, it was that bad. I moved back to the South. Jesus. So
Better
anyway.
thee than me.
I know, I'm with you. So anyway, point is, so I went to the movies all the time because it was free air conditioning. And I would hop from multiplex to multiplex. And so I think in the same day, what a bizarre quadruple feature. It was this, The Cowboy Way, with Kiefer Sutherland and somebody else, and Strom Thurmond, I think. Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, and Clifford. And you know what? As awful as 3 of those movies were, with The Shadow being the good one, I would kill for any one of them compared to what I get in multiplexes now. Because they're all weird ass movies. This was because I hated Batman, and I could only deal with trying to pretend that Dick Tracy was a good movie for so long. But it's a weird movie. It's a watchable movie. It's a strange movie. It's got those great Stephen Sondheim songs and the colors and all that. But it's much closer to Town and Country than Reds. So this one, they finally got it right. They really did. They really got it right. And I'm a Doc Savage fan, and so it's kind of like being a Frenchman next to Germany. You're technically you're kind of enemies, but when you're having to face down the United States or something, suddenly you're kind of like, yeah, we have more in common than we thought. And so I went to this kind of almost seeking an embassy, and I got it. Because getting source material in the Shadow was kind of difficult. You had the radio shows and stuff like that, but getting the pulps, Gordon and I were talking about this the other night, was not that easy at the time. And Gordon, you talked about the edgelords, and in that period, that sort of Iron Age of comics period, and they're all clinging to the Shadow, the Howard Chaykin stuff, and so on and so forth. And it just, to me, I had the misfortune of it being the epitome of that stuff. So misled was I. And then I saw this iteration, because I had heard some of the Orson Welles stuff, and it was good. And Victor Jory's from my hometown. Went to school with his granddaughter, who was, but I'll tell you, God, I love this movie. Not even Penelope Ann Miller can sing it, and she's not the greatest actress in the world, but she's no Melody Anderson. Anyway, Susie, you're right. Baldwin was terrific. Now we're lucky to find him in a tux medicated pad, but back then he was something. He was something else. And you could, I have this long theory, which I'll spare you, but basically I think Warner Brothers intended him to play Batman. They went to Tim Burton and said, hey, get that guy from Beetlejuice who was so perfect for Batman. And then he hires Michael Keaton. It's like, why didn't you hire the guy who played Otho while you're at it? Appropriate actors in that film compared to Alec Baldwin. Hell, Gina Davis would have made a better Batman. Anyway, so it's got a crisp plot, not too long. It's under 2 hours. It pops along. They had the gall to put John Connors in a part that we desperately wanted to see him in, and somehow he was young enough to still do it. The production design is beautiful, but it's not so opulent that you feel guilty, like you're just watching production design and they're gonna have to make a bunch of stupid choices to afford it. It's a production design that fits the movie. You have those great cigarette billboards. You have Peter Boyle. I mean, like, you have fucking Andre Gregory. Andre goddamn Gregory's in this fucking thing. My Dinner with Andre, a Henry Jaglom movie, and this. Wow, that's a triple feature. And I think that's the first time I've broken out the F word, and I reserve it for Andre goddamn Gregory in this. How wonderful is that to see him? Of all things, he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to do. He did this. And yes, John Lone was amazing in it.
Oh, I loved him, Patrick. He was so intriguing.
When he gets the lobotomy, yeah, sure, yeah.
That was like a Jules saying's "fuck you."
There's a drink that I make called that. It's Everclear and Vienna. Anyway, so I love the movie. There are so many little details that you could fill up a road trip.
Now we do get Inspector Wainwright, but there is a Joe Cardona nod in this movie when they're inspecting the museum heist post. Listen, they say Detective Cardona is that way. That's a nod to the pulps of a character from the pulps, Detective Joe Cardona. We didn't actually see him in this movie. It would have been nice because if Joe Cardona actually would have been a more of a main character, we would have had a more of a challenge to the Shadow, because Joe Cardona was familiar with the Shadow. He was the one sort of investigating him along the way. He knew he exists somewhere. He didn't know who he was, but he knew he existed until.
I don't know who I am.
Well, you have to keep in mind, Joel, that the Shadow as a character had been published from 1931 to I think like 1949 or 1950. So there's a lot of lore there.
Career.
And trying to shove, it's one of the things that is, in comparing this to modern movies, a lot of modern, especially modern comic adaptations, shove in Easter eggs and references, and I think they're a little overstuffed. This is precise, and this really, you can tell that David Cope
Kep.
who wrote the screenplay, you can tell he read enough of the pulps, because one of Gibson's writing tricks when he's writing The Shadow, it's always about misdirection. It's always about getting you to look elsewhere and seeing the shadow come in. And like when you see in that introductory sequence on the bridge, it's before you see the shadow in full, it's like glimpses here, a little CGI blur there. And all throughout, it's never this kind of straightforward, nothing is, you're never hit over the head with it. You know, like if you read the pulps, you know who Shrevey is. You know that the guy in the screen is Burbank. You know that, and you know different things. And if you, and there's at least one person at the time that I knew who was a hardcore Shadow fan who complained that, oh, they didn't have Yinko revealed as Kent Allard, which is, if it's one of Gibson's great tricks, that for years he was writing that the Shadow was posing as Lamont Cranston, and actually had novels where the Shadow and Lamont Cranston were working together. But he decided in creating the origin of the Shadow, it was Kent Allard, who was a World War I spy whose plane crashed in the Himalayas, and he developed his mind powers. But I think there's such a precision in the screenplay where there isn't a wasted story beat, there isn't a wasted moment. Everyone gets a chance to shine, and it just, this is a refreshingly short, precise movie, and that's why I love it so much.
Gordon, let me ask you a question. Do you think maybe they were saving the Kent Allard thing for a sequel?
No, I think it just wasn't that important. It's one of those real, it's a very, very deep cut. And I think for this movie, all you need to know is, I have to keep it, all you need is Lamont Cranston, Shadow. Especially since, there's the pulp Shadow and the radio Shadow, which are two, in the pulps, Margot Lane is not really the Shadow's paramour. She's she's with Lamont Cranston, but she kind of hangs out with the Shadow because they got, putting up appearances. In the radio show, she's his assistant, for lack of a better term. So I think the whole Kent Allard thing was more of a, you know what, just we don't need to worry about that for this movie. This is not a movie made for the fans. It's made for the audience.
Which ironically is what The Shadow was written for.
Yeah.
Originally.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question to more Patrick and Gordon. What's the first radio episode you heard of The Shadow?
I have no idea. I was so young. I have no idea.
I can tell you when it was.
Okay.
It was like 1983.
Mine was before the movie. It was a year before the movie on a AM, because AM plays older things, AM radio, that is. And
we were just hearing that. Yes.
And the first episode I ever heard was The Silent Avenger, which The Silent Avenger is about a sniper whose brother was put in prison, and his brother is convincing the sniper who's suffering from PTSD, in a sense, to kill people. And the Shadow, the way they did the radio was the Shadow did kill people, but he was more of a craftsman about it. In the pulps, he would just directly murder your ass. But
he was an artist.
Well, in the radio, he was an artist. I mean, that's the thing. He tells Denny Bricker, hold the grenade, hold the grenade, hold the grenade. And go list. I'll leave a link for this episode too, because it's really good. Orson Welles voices the Shadow in this episode, the Silent Avenger. It's really, really good. The radio Shadow stuff is excellent. If you haven't listened to it, Dawn and Susie, I will leave many, many episodes for you to listen to.
Joel, I just want to interject something real quick. And I had a brief conversation with Patrick recently. One of the other things my mom showed me, that in the 70s, it was old radio became very popular on radio, and people were kind of getting back into it. And I remember we listened to some radio shows, and and this must have been the early 70s. I remember hearing an episode of The Shadow, and it was kind of a joke in the family, and we would go, "The Shadow knows."
Yeah.
And my grandmother would know about it. My mom said that was a real big thing, The Shadow. And we listened to a few episodes of The Shadow together. So
Yeah.
my mom showed me that too. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a very good, I had a kind of an understanding of radio when I was a kid, just from my parents.
Yeah, I mean, here in Chicago, we had like a Saturday afternoon show, which later became Those Were the Days in the 80s. And in the early 70s, you had kind of like you had the growth of kind of nostalgia culture, but for then it was the 1930s and 40s. Because you also had and that's when old time radio came out. That's when you had a lot of these pulp, because you had the pulps led into the Men's Adventure paperbacks, which led into reprints of Doc Savage, The Shadow, and some of those other characters, which led to the comics. But you also had this kind of like counterpoint. So you had movies like The Great Gatsby, Day of the Locust, Paper Moon. They shoot horses, don't they? Right. So it's this really time of, I mean, it's right after Watergate, and your older generation is looking back on their past and saying, "Oh, this was all great." Kind of like, I mean, there were magazines. I think the same publisher of Famous Monsters of Filmland also published some of those nostalgia magazines. So,
well, and Gordon, I'd like to tack onto that. It might not be exactly the same, but what was premiering in 1972? You had the Waltons.
Mm-hmm.
That was right at the beginning, almost at the beginning of the Nixon second term. You had, and I don't laugh, and they'd never do it now. But what else did you have? You had that Christmas. You had The House Without a Christmas Tree. You had Jason Robards and Mildred Natwick. Jason Robards was smoking, and I watched it a couple years ago. It was really raw. Of course, that was after World War II, but it really showed an America after the Depression and the war, but it was part of that nostalgia. You're spot on with all of what you just said.
Cool.
What's interesting is that time, in some ways, and certainly the decades after the 80s, was so culturally bereft that I actually have nostalgia more for the nostalgia booms that were going on back then.
Oh,
it's like reverberant nostalgia.
Yeah, because that's when the kind of the whole nostalgia movement started, because then in the 80s you had looking back to the 60s, the 90s you look back to the 70s, the aughts you started then it started eating its own tail.
But now here's the wacky thing about nostalgia. Times were so lousy they couldn't wait to get nostalgia, because we're leaving out The Godfather, which is certainly a piece of nostalgia, but Grease, and thus Happy Days, 50s nostalgia, somehow just a few years old. Nevertheless, everything old is new again. And if you go back and watch the play Grease, that's a pretty serious show. Much more so than we recall. Now, Joel, I have to ask you one thing. What is compelling about any character called the silent anything on radio? How does that work? Okay, that's all. I just had to ask. Think about it. It was counterintuitive. Who was the producer who said, "God, we need another silent character on the radio"? Because those Chaplin shorts we've been running have been big hits.
The episode's called The Silent Avenger. It's really good.
Was he deadly? Was he deadly despite the fact that he was silent?
Let me just put it to you this way. The Shadow was very deadly in that episode. But so was the guy with the sniper rifle. Look, what did you guys think of Tim Curry in this movie? Susie?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had no idea that he had been in this movie until I I saw the credits at the beginning, and yeah, I thought he played a really good. They cast him really well to play that role. I mean, I'm not familiar with as much with the characters as you guys are, but I thought he did it really well.
Don?
Repeat the question, Jewel, about
What did you think of Tim Curry's character?
I'm sorry, Tim Curry. That's right.
Yeah,
I think it was an intriguing choice. I mean, it was almost cartoonish, but he didn't like go over the top. And you just knew, I don't know. It was like what Susie said. It was really great to see Tim Curry. He's a fine actor, and he brought his thing to that role, and it was perfect.
Yeah. Gordon?
What could have been like a one-note idiot role, Tim Curry turns into a multifaceted idiot role, because he doesn't just do the, oh, I'm behind everything. Oh, I'm going to be king. Oh, well, you mean king? I mean prince. Especially at the end when the shadow confronts him and basically makes him jump out the window. Like, he's just
I love that.
full on nuts at that point. And he's like, he takes what could have been a really, really lame role and just livens it up.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, what did you think of Tim Curry?
He's marvelous.
Absolutely.
He's great. And I I'm going to say something controversial here. He's finally grown into his peculiarly British grotesquerie. Tim Curry is not a handsome man. He was able to exude tremendous sex appeal as Frankenfurter, but sometimes someone just ages into their looks. And Tim Curry was a guy who aged into his looks of a truly weird-looking Englishman, specifically very English with the eyes and the lack of chin and all of that. And being a good actor, he's an honest actor, and I feel like Tim really started to play it up. It's like Tim realized, oh, this is who I can use this. And he does, because he's not menacing. He has the peculiar grotesquerie of a big geek who thinks he's menacing. And that's on just the spectrum of entertaining. That's far more entertaining, and it makes him the perfect foil for Alec Baldwin. I think he's great. I think he's 5-star Vindaloo, baby.
How many people have seen Tim Curry in the original the miniseries?
I think, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Loved it. I love that so much that I refuse to watch the remake.
Oh, Susie, the remake's really good.
Really?
Trust me. You can enjoy both.
Yeah.
You can enjoy Olivia Hamlet and Burton as Hamlet. Okay, it's allowed. Especially part 2, which I think is so good, it almost feels like it wasn't written. It feels like it just kind of got plugged into Stephen King's head. It's great. Bill Hader's magnificent. Wow.
Really, that miniseries, it takes me back to my younger years, and I don't know. I thought he was so scary. He was like the scariest clown ever.
Oh.
And when I see how they do the makeup to the most, to the recent ones, I'm like, this clown isn't even scary looking. He's not as scary as Tim Curry. So, but no.
But he's scary when he runs.
Oh.
I mean, that is a very scary run.
So you liked that too, then, Gordon?
Well, I haven't seen it. I just like that image.
Oh, okay.
The It remake is pretty good. My only issue with remakes is Warner Brothers built, before anybody even saw the film, before they saw the remake, they built it as it's better than the miniseries. Well, here's the thing. Warner Brothers, the It miniseries didn't get the same budget as the movie you're doing. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I hate comparison. It's like, okay, they compared I'm a big Halloween fan, as you all know. Look, they compared Rob Zombie's remake to John Carpenter's. It's like, wait a second, no one's seen it yet, and that's when everybody kicked around. Is like, well, it's a remake. I'm like, wait a minute, time out. Has anyone here seen it? Like, we're believing the advertisements. Like, see the movie first and then judge it for yourself. It's such the media plays such hype machine. It sort of turns you off, and you get, and
Nothing
that's what
turns
happens
me-
to a lot of like audiences that are, I don't want to say purist, but who are loyal to the original product. Is the media turns you off with this hype machine of what of the movie's already better before you've actually saw it. A lot of other people saw it, but before you've saw it. And
You talking about Ron Ely again?
well, it's like, well, wait a second. I haven't seen it yet, and that's where a lot of people get turned off too. Because I mean, I watched this happen with Rob Zombie's Halloween, where people were getting turned off when people were praising it, before we saw it, and I was like, first of all, don't hate or love a film before going to go see it. Just here's, as soon as people start doing something, it was on the radio and they were praising something before I saw it, I would turn the radio off. Because I don't want to hear praise or hatred for a movie that I haven't seen.
Well,
Yeah,
Tool, I mean, I know what you mean, but
Depends on if it's
like,
funny.
I didn't hear anything about the new It, not really. I just saw the picture of Pennywise, and I'm like, oh hell no.
Yeah, I could see
that doesn't look scary to me.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying. It's a good movie, though.
Okay, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good movie. It's a good movie. Yeah, and it doesn't make the old one better or worse. This is not a competition. It's merely an exhibition. Right. Please, no wagering.
But don't you think, though, or I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this, but sometimes when
I'll give you a Klondike bar.
When a movie has got a big budget or whatever, I don't know, especially in horror, it's not necessary, because like you brought up Halloween, the first one. To me, that's one of the best and scariest, movies I've ever seen. And when I attempted to watch the Rob Zombie one, I mean, I turned it off after about maybe 10 minutes. I was like, no way.
Here's the thing too. It's not when you get into remakes, it depends on the situation. It's okay. For example, when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was coming out, I had seen every adaptation of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Thank you, Mom. But I did. And because my mother was a corruptible soul and she loved watching horror, and so did I. So when I got to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, I said, that movie is excellent, And here's the Texas Chainsaw I actually liked The Next Generation with Matthew McConaughey in it. This was before he was famous, and Renee Zellweger's in that movie, by the way, too. Before she was famous. Now you get the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Listen, did she ever get an antihistamine?
I don't know.
Because she looks like she needs an antihistamine.
I don't know. The Texas
Chainsaw... I need to visit my antihistamine at some point.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was a very interesting situation, because it was the movie that what nobody knew at the time was going to kick off the remake craze for the horror fans, because after that would come the remake of Halloween, if you will, and other remakes to follow. Now, the movie did have success, but my biggest issue with the movie, keep in mind the 90s, and this is going back a bit, so I apologize for the long overhaul. Keep in mind, there were 90s television actresses such as Jennifer Love Hewitt, and the actresses from the Seventh Heaven show. Neve Campbell was already in movies, but she was also on television. You knew these actresses were going to hit it big when they went to the silver screen. They were talented. And the girl from Seventh Heaven, the one who played the oldest daughter, she was sort of the last on the totem pole of, you knew she was going to go to the silver screen. Everybody knew it. It was just a matter of time. And her first movie was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And here's the real issue I have with that movie. And I love Arlie Ermey. He's spoiler alert, he plays one of the antagonists. From a protagonist standpoint, the only known name in there is that actress from television. And walking in knowing that, without even seeing a trailer for the movie, I looked at that poster, I saw her name, and I pulled out a 50, and my brother was walking right beside me. I said, I will bet you $50 fucking that she lives. Without even seeing one clip, one trailer, and he pulled out a 50, he said, you're on. And guess who lives?
Were you guys at urinals when you did this?
No, we were out. We were walking to
Yeah,
the theater.
because you shouldn't be touching money when you're peeing, you know.
No, we were walking to the
theater.
we were walking to the theater, and we got to where the posters are, and we're reading the names of who's in the movie, and that's where I got out my wallet, I pulled out the 50, and I told my brother, I said, I will bet you $50 she lives, and he said, you're on, and guess what? She lived. That by casting one and only star in that whole movie. When you go watch the original,
that's Gene Dixon.
When you go watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there isn't a known goddamn name in that movie. There's no famous person.
John Larroquette.
Movie.
It begins with a known.
That's a voiceover. That's a voiceover. You stop that. That's a voiceover.
So is The Shadow on radio. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a voiceover. By the way, he's done the majority of the voiceovers for the movies.
He did Life Force. He did the voiceover in Life Force.
So John Larroquette,
Ted and Kelly comes.
God.
Jewel?
But from a star standpoint, there's nobody in the original from a big star standpoint. With the remake, you have a known actress who everybody knew was coming, and she's the only known name in there. They made it too predictable.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that's the biggest artistic problem with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. I think on the spectrum of artistic, bankruptness, that's like that's get way back in line. Yeah. Oh boy.
Jewel, I'm just gonna throw in real quick my example of less is more. The Haunting 1963, The Haunting 1999.
Yeah,
I'll take 1963 hands down with Julie Harris.
What a dog, that remake. Not even a Watson and Crick design staircase could save that damn thing.
Let me give you my favorite remake versus original.
Okay.
John Carpenter's Thing, 1983. It was a remake of an okay movie. The Thing 2010, it's somebody's VFX demo reel to get a job.
Yeah. That's true.
Wow.
No. But about the movie we're talking about, The Shadow. Back to that movie.
Who wants to talk about something we all love?
Yeah. Let's talk about what we love. Susie, what's something that you loved throughout the movie? You have more favorite scenes? Is there something you want to add about the movie?
Well, the special effects still hold up. I mean, that was pretty freaking amazing. I was very surprised how good it looks, and I think Gordon brought that up earlier. I mean, it looks, I don't know, it still holds up. I think that, for me watching it for the first time now, it didn't seem dated at all. It just, it really held up really nice. And also the person that did the music, I mean,
Jerry
the music
Goldsmith
was so good. Yes, exactly.
The great Jerry Goldsmith.
It was spot on. It gave me like how the kids say nowadays. It gave me all the feels. It was so spot on and perfect for that movie.
Goldsmith had gotten into this period with his career where he had really started mixing electronic instruments with an orchestra. And, unlike, someone like Hans Zimmer, he had taste. He had really good taste in how he did it. And he used it because there's this one note, what I'm talking about, that thing that he does, that just with one note on such an unusual instrument he creates a sense of mystery and something unusual and something coming at you from a direction you're not expecting, but something that fits at the same time. And to say I'm doing the shadow and we're going to keep it in the flavor of the period, and I'm using lots of electronic instruments, is just a recipe for disaster when you hear it, when you hear the words spoken.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you see how Goldsmith did it, wow.
And I want to add, I agree with Susie and Patrick. Well, Jerry Goldsmith's one of the greatest of the greats, but music supervisor. And when Susie and I were talking a little bit earlier, who was the music supervisor? Jelly Bean Benitez. Does anybody know who Jelly Bean was?
Mhm.
Yep. And he was music supervisor. And I saw him on there. I just went, Jelly Bean. Madonna would not be Madonna if she had dated him, because he did all of her early club mixing. And as soon as she was done with him, bye-bye now, and she moved on. That was pre her early days. But it just goes on and on and on with Jerry Goldsmith. Who put all of this together? It was fantastic. And well, anyway, that was my thought.
It's a good one too.
Did she date Weird Al Yankovic too?
That was just in the movie. That was meant as a joke. That was meant as a joke.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I can't believe I actually had to explain a Weird Al joke.
Oh,
he did. Weird Al dated Gene Kirkpatrick for years, like 5 years.
Oh God. Ugh.
It was horrid. Terry Richardson did a pictorial of it. It was the most transgressive work ever. Dolph Sweet showed up at their orgy.
Now I need Lamont to wipe that out of my memory, because that is really scary. Gene Kirkpatrick. Patrick, please.
We're talking about Jennifer Love Hewitt.
No.
The only Love Hewitt around this place is for Christopher, a.k.a. the Cosmic Mr. Belvedere.
No. Patrick, is there anything you want to add about the movie?
It needed Bob Uecker as Webster's baffled father. Did Bob ever pick up the fact that maybe he was not Webster's biological father? Or was he adopted?
You're thinking of Alex Karras. Alex Karras played Webster's father.
Okay. Because I never understood how, Conrad Bain and Bob Uecker would have a son like that. There's things that don't make sense.
It's genetics. It's all genetics.
No, that's it. I'm done. Genetics McDonald. Now, here's a thought. Now, Susie, if you liked this movie, I'm probably going to open up a can of worms here. You might want to see, if you haven't seen it, The Phantom.
Yes.
Came out a couple of years later. And I think it's not the equal of The Shadow. In terms of The Phantom's good qualities, maybe The Shadow's not equal to The Phantom. They both have interesting, kind of separate but equal qualities, and they make a wonderful double bill. If you like this and you'd like more of that, The Phantom is kind of like The Illusionist to The Shadow's Prestige.
Okay, I'm adding it to my list. Now, they didn't do a remake of it where, there's a couple of them, right? Is there only one?
No, there's only one.
There's only one.
With the fabulous Treat Williams as the villain, who's hilarious. He's gut busting in it.
It stars Billy Zane. Okay.
Billy Zane and his toupee, and not Jeanette MacDonald. Who is it? Patrick McGowan. I can't keep him straight. As the Phantom's dad.
Yeah. By the way, introduction role for one Catherine Zeta-Jones in that movie.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, she's right. She's right.
Just saying.
Impossibly beautiful.
It is one of the most underrated superhero movies of the 90s. Both these movies are really. The Shadow and the Phantom are both really, really good.
They make a great drive-in double.
Yeah, they do. Here's the thing. I was the one who was going, hey, the Phantom's really good. People are like, well, Mission Impossible is really good. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's a good movie. But the Phantom is a really good movie. So.
Yeah, well, Mission Impossible didn't care about the source when the Phantom did.
No, that's true.
Or like E-Mission.
That's true. That's true. Gordon, anything you want to add about The Shadow?
I want to give a heads up to Russell Mulcahy's direction. I mean, this is the same guy who years before gave us Highlander. And you can tell it's got that same kind of, I know a mood, I want to hit that mood, and I'm going to keep it consistent. I mean, this is also a guy who did, in his younger days, he did a lot of rock videos. He did some for Billy Joel. He did a lot for Elton John. He did Video Killed the Radio Star for the Buggles. And most importantly, he did Mondo Bondage for the Tubes. So he's got that. So I just want to point out he's a really good director.
Yeah. So Susie, Dawn, when's the next time you guys can come back, and what do you want to discuss? I'll let you pick.
Well, I'm gonna Susie. We kind of had like a pre-show of our own before this. We were discussing that. I'm gonna send you something tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'm gonna PM you in X, and I'm gonna request that we do a show on it. I think it's gonna be something you like. It's a find that I did, and we can discuss it. But that I can't. I want to keep it a secret because it's a surprise. It's Dark Shadows related.
Listen, I'll watch.
It's the rip, isn't it? Jules is gonna love it.
I'm gonna say this as a compliment to myself. I'm a whore. I'll watch anything once. That's what I'll say.
I think you'll like this. But Joel, can I just briefly add one more thing to this movie?
Sure.
I feel I'm gonna go out on a limb here. When I was watching it, I saw a lot of it's just me, some early 80s Spielbergian influences in this film in a good way. And one of the things that kind of stood out when the ball was coming down the stairs, it reminded me of the ball that was chasing Harrison Ford in Raiders. I mean, there were just these little nuances. And the last thing I'm going to say about the movie is it provided my own nostalgia for that time, because I was just coming into my third. I'm only like, it reminded me of my youth, because Penelope Miller is like 7 months younger than me. So I look back at it, it's like, oh, that's how we were all so young back then. And it was kind of a window. That was an unexpected thing that I saw. That's the year Friends premiered on NBC. And it just kind of was taking me back to that time in a roundabout way. So it was really a gift that I needed this week, because the last couple of weeks have been kind of lousy. So I really appreciate you talking about The Shadow and doing this. I think and I'll let Susie say her thing, but it really lifted my spirits. And it's like, God, this is what, Patrick was saying, when you went down to the Cineplex, that was what you got to see.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with Dawn, and I don't think that I would have watched it or would have come my way if you hadn't brought it up. Like, I don't think I would have ever watched it. So thank you for recommending it and for having us on.
You're welcome. Listen, I try to recommend good stuff, I swear. Not just Halloween movies, I swear.
Well, I don't know if I'll watch that Rob Zombie Halloween movie, but I'll give it a whirl.
Well, Halloween 6.
It's a different thing.
Halloween 6 is a good movie. That's not Rob Zombie.
No, I watched Halloween 6, but I meant the Rob Zombie remake.
Oh, no. I watched.
Susie, can I? I'm sorry, Jewel. You go.
No, I watched. I'll tell you this. I went to theaters to see Rob Zombie's Halloween, and let me say this as a compliment to Rob. He out-Dean Cundy, the guy who was the original cinematographer on the original Halloween. He outshot Dean Cundy. When you watch that movie, it is a beautifully shot film. For as dark as it is, and it's a dark look, horror slasher movies are meant to be dark for the most part. They have dark subtext. It's a murder. But the way Rob shoots that movie, it's in a sense beautifully dark because you're watching a master cinematographer who knows how to shoot a movie, because he's shot so many goddamn music videos as a fucking musician. Rob Zombie will not ever get enough credit as one of the best cinematographers out there.
He's a very fine filmmaker, and if you want to see a Rob Zombie movie that's not a Rob Zombie movie, look at The Lords of Salem, which is essentially a Ken Russell Kubrick movie that he made, almost on a bet himself to prove that he wasn't. Rob Zombie didn't make a Rob Zombie movie until 31.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that was the name of it, right? That's
Yeah,
where it felt like he finally said, okay, I'll make a Rob Zombie, because none of his movies are really what people think when they go in. Susie, can I make a pitch for Rob Zombie's Halloween? Okay. You love Rhapsody in Blue, right? I bet. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. It's a piece of music. It's very pretty. And it's this beautiful melody. And it was, originally done on piano, with a little bit of extra. And it has been reorchestrated and rearranged so many times, and each time it's interesting because the melody's interesting. Now think about how spare Halloween as a movie is, in the best way. It is the Rhapsody in Blue of horror. It's just it's a very elegant straight line. Nothing will ever dislodge it. Nothing will ever displace it. It is the horror film because of its elegant simplicity in the best sense. It has simplicity, but it's not simple.
Yeah.
And so it exists as a baseline against which other directors can and should. I would love to have seen a remake of Halloween every year by a vastly different director. And they can take their voice and riff on that melody and come up with something unique and fabulous that is its own thing. It's not Halloween, it's Rob Zombie's Halloween. And let it just be that. It's just like Sammy and Dean could do the same cover of a song that Frank had done, and all three are great. It's got a lot of weird stuff going on. I wrote a thing in it for Monster Cereal, which is the first book Wallace and I did, and Rob Zombie re-Facebooked it. He liked it. He said nice things about it, and so I'm very fond of that movie. It doesn't mean I don't love John Carpenter's Halloween. It doesn't mean I think it's better than John Carpenter's Halloween, but it's a wonderful, wonderful riff.
Well, I guess I can watch it, give it another chance, because I mean, when I watched it, maybe I don't know, maybe I was in a bad headspace, but I was like, oh no, this is not going to do, and I shut it off. But you know what? And I know that I'm in the kind of minority here. I did like his remake of the Munsters.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
I did like that, and I remember listening to you guys' podcast on it,
Right.
like weekend or so after it had come out, and I did enjoy that. That was fun.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I do think when Rob shot that, and I don't know if he'll ever do an interview about it, but I really think that his movie was more meant for a live audience with the comedy that he was going for.
Halloween? I agree.
No, the Munsters. But yeah, I think the Munsters was meant for a live audience, and I do think he did a good job. I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was entertaining. I got the jokes; they were funny to me. But I mean, look, everybody's taste in comedy or horror or action is different. Nobody's view is wrong because we all have our own. So,
well, let me just ask one question really quick. Was the movie, and I can't remember because it's been years, was it pretty loud? Like,
Rob's Halloween?
The Halloween, the Rob Zombie Halloween.
I think here's the thing about Rob's Halloween. It's not, because when you don't watch John Carpenter's Halloween prior to watching Rob's, because I think that gets the sense of, oh, this is going to be this nice little melody of 70s. No, it's not. You have a very in-your-face cast of characters. You have a very in-your-face tone. It does come across as loud, because here's the thing: when I watched it in the theaters, it did come across as loud. But again, it's a movie theater. Movie theaters tend to be loud when everybody shuts the hell up. So, but when I watched this in my own home, it wasn't loud because I wasn't having it blaring in my ear. It's just the characters tend to talk loud and scream at each other. Because again, let me say this, in my opinion, Rob Zombie's Halloween, and I'm going to go to hell, is not a remake of John's. And here's why. John Carpenter's Halloween, the original, was not the sister connection. That didn't come till part 2. As much as I love to pick on the Halloween community, Rob Zombie in his first Halloween movie reveals that Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' sister in his Halloween. That's what Rob is remaking the sister connection. And my only real nitpick about his movie is that why are you remaking something that already exists that's still in story mode in the current series? That it didn't upset me. It just confused the hell out of me. But it's a fun movie to watch, though, in my opinion. So
yeah, well, Jewel, if you're remaking something, you get to take in elements that you think work. I mean, that's why it's a remake. It's like if I decided to remake The Shadow and I wanted to give him machine guns for hands, that would be, it'd be a bad move, but it's called directorial intent.
It worked in the Best Years of Our Lives remake that Rob Zombie did.
Mm-hmm.
Susie, it's it's not Jules is not a remake. It is taking a lot of those plot elements and it's doing different stuff. It's kind of like Rob Zombie just sat around. It's a big experiment. He said, well, what if Michael Myers talks as a kid? Yeah. And what if, we deal with Laurie's, adopted parents and all this other stuff? What if? And in terms of the loudness, it takes a real page from William Friedkin. Because if you watch The Exorcist, one of the things The Exorcist does is that it goes from long periods of silence to sudden periods of great noise. Long periods of darkness to sudden bright images. And it disrupts the audience. It's funny because when I think of this movie, I think of a very quiet film. I think of, Laurie coming across Michael with the tombstone. And I think of Without the Mask and Ace Ventura. And I think of these great scenes with an earnestly incompetent Sam Loomis as the psychiatrist who makes every wrong, touchy-feely, awful 70s psychologist move he can, sort of from the right place, wanting to be liked. He kind of wants young Michael to like him. And it's this great critique of where the 70s kind of went wrong in some ways. And those scenes are very quiet. And there are lots of scenes of Sherry Moon, who's just such a wonderful actress, and Rob loves her so much. He portrays her so well. Sherry Moon just in this psychiatric prison at this table with Michael and with Sam Loomis, and he's just trying to reach the kid, and the kid is just fucking with him. And that because they've never seen Halloween, they don't have the tools to know where this is going to go, and so they do the best they can. So the periods of silence are really very painful in the film, purposely so. It's a complex movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, here's a great example of silence allowed too. When you see the Strode father, he's outside and it's quiet and he's smoking a cigarette. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here's Michael who just punches him right in the face. And it's like, it's so deafening. And it's like, holy shit. Yeah. Go watch it. Go check it out. Rob Zombie's Halloween. You may enjoy it. You may come on here and drop us with a rock bottom. Who knows? We'll find out. But whatever Don's gonna send us, I will do with you guys. We'll watch it. Whatever. DS related, Mister. I'm watching you. I'm watching. It's that USC hat that threw me off. Okay, there's going to be some links to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound, link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page, link to the Shadowcast hosted by Razor Fist, and link to the Silent Avenger is all going to be in the description box. I'm going to send 2 of those links to these 4 fine folks here that have decided to join.
But we won't know which 2 until they arrive.
I said 4. I said 4. All 4 of you. You're all 4 excellent people. And I'll see you 2 gentlemen tomorrow night for episode 915 of Dark Shadows. Susie.
I'll be there too.
Dawn, I will see you next weekend for another fun adventure. And everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, all.